The transport shuttle shook hard as it entered the docking bay of the Galactic Academy of Unified Species. Monroe grabbed the armrest of her seat and held on tight. The other passengers around her, all aliens of different shapes and sizes, seemed unbothered by the turbulence. They floated gently in their seats, their bodies designed for much lighter gravity than what had grown up with. Was 18 years old, with straight brown hair that she kept tied back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes were a deep green color, and her skin had the tan of someone who spent most of her life outdoors. She came from a small town in Montana, a place where the nearest neighbor lived 5 miles away, and the winters could kill you if you weren't careful. Now she was about to start her first day at an alien school, somewhere in the outer reaches of the galaxy, surrounded by species she had only read about in books. The shuttle landed with a gentle thump, and the other passengers began to rise from their seats. Watch them move, noting how different they all were from each other. There was a tall creature with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to be made of thousands of tiny lenses. Next to it floated something that looked like a jellyfish, its body glowing with soft blue light. Behind her, a small furry creature with large ears was gathering its belongings, its movements quick and nervous. Stood up and grabbed her bag from the overhead compartment. It was heavy, filled with everything she owned. Back on Earth, she had been told to pack light, but she hadn't really understood what that meant until now. Looking at the other students, she realized that most of them carried almost nothing. Their belongings were probably already waiting for them in their rooms, transported ahead by some technology she didn't fully understand. She followed the crowd out of the shuttle and into the docking bay. The space was enormous, bigger than any building she had ever been inside. The ceiling stretched up so high that she couldn't see the top, and the walls curved away on either side, disappearing into the distance. Hundreds of ships were parked in neat rows, and thousands of aliens moved between them, going about their business. Felt very small and very alone. A voice spoke in her ear, coming from the small translator device that had been implanted behind her left ear before she left Earth. Welcome to the Galactic Academy of Unified Species. Please proceed to orientation in Section 7, Hall 12. Your student identification has been registered. Have a pleasant educational experience. Looked around, trying to figure out where Section 7 was. The signs above her head were written in a script she couldn't read, but as she stared at them, the translator kicked in and the symbols shifted into English. Section 7 was to her left, through a large archway decorated with what looked like flowers made of crystal. She started walking, her heavy boots making solid sounds on the metal floor. Around her, the other students moved in near silence, their bodies adapted to lives in lower gravity or different atmospheres. Some of them glanced at her as she passed, their alien eyes widening slightly before they looked away. Didn't think much of it. She was used to being stared at. Back home, she was the girl who could outrun anyone in the county, who had once wrestled a calf to the ground during a branding gone wrong, who had survived 3 days alone in the mountains after getting lost during a hiking trip. She was tough, and she knew it. What she didn't know was that to the aliens around her, she looked like something out of a nightmare. The Galactic Academy had been accepting students from over 1,000 different species for nearly 500 years. In all that time, they had developed a very clear understanding of what most intelligent life in the galaxy looked like. Most species came from planets with low gravity, thin atmospheres, and mild climates. They had evolved to be gentle creatures, their bodies fragile and their minds adapted for cooperation rather than conflict. Earth was different. Earth was what the galactic community called a planet where everything seemed designed to kill everything else. The gravity was crushing by galactic standards. The atmosphere was thick with oxygen that could cause fires to spread uncontrollably, and the native life had spent billions of years evolving increasingly creative ways to murder each other. Humans were the apex predators of this nightmare world. They had risen to dominance not through strength alone, but through a terrifying combination of intelligence, endurance, and sheer stubborn refusal to die. They could run for hours without stopping, chasing their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could survive injuries that would kill most other species. They could eat plants and animals that were poisonous to nearly everyone else. And they had a disturbing tendency to form emotional bonds with other predators and keep them as pets. Monroe, walking through the halls of the Galactic Academy with her heavy bag and her practical ponytail, had no idea that she was the scariest thing most of these aliens had ever seen. She found her way to Section 7 and located Hall 12 without too much trouble. The orientation room was large and circular, with seats arranged in rising tiers around a central platform. About 50 other students were already there, representing at least 20 different species. Found an empty seat near the back and sat down, dropping her bag at her feet with a solid thump. The student next to her, a small creature covered in soft purple fur, flinched at the sound and edged away from her. "Sorry," said, offering a friendly smile. "My bag's pretty heavy." The purple creature made a squeaking sound and moved to a seat 3 rows away. Frowned, confused by the reaction, but before she could think about it too much, the lights in the room dimmed and a holographic image appeared on the central platform. It showed a tall alien with silvery skin and large, dark eyes. The alien raised one hand in greeting. "Welcome, students, to the Galactic Academy of Unified Species," the hologram said, its voice smooth and calm. "I am Administrator, and I will be overseeing your orientation today. You have been chosen from among the minds of your respective worlds to participate in this prestigious program. Over the next 4 years, you will learn to work alongside species very different from your own, preparing you for careers in diplomacy, science, trade, and governance." The hologram went on to explain the rules of the academy, the schedule of classes, and the various facilities available to students. Listened carefully, trying to absorb as much information as she could. She had worked hard to earn this spot, passing tests and interviews that most humans found impossibly difficult. She wasn't going to waste this opportunity. "Now," Administrator continued, "I want to address something that some of you may have noticed. This year, we have accepted students from a world that has not previously participated in our exchange program. Earth, a Class 12 in the outer spiral arm, has sent 10 students to our academy as part of a new diplomatic initiative." A murmur ran through the room. Could feel the other students turning to look at her, their eyes searching for the human among them. She raised her hand slightly, acknowledging her presence. "I want to assure all students that the humans have been thoroughly screened and have agreed to follow all academy rules regarding conduct," said. "They are here to learn, just like the rest of you. I expect everyone to treat them with the same respect and courtesy you would show any other student." The murmur grew louder, heard words being whispered that her translator struggled to process. Predator, danger. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had known that coming here would be challenging, but she hadn't expected to be treated like some kind of monster. The orientation continued for another 2 hours, covering everything from meal schedules to emergency evacuation procedures. Took notes on her tablet, trying to memorize the layout of the station and the names of the key staff members. By the time it was over, her head was spinning with new information. As the students began to file out of the room, gathered her bag and headed for the exit. She had been assigned a room in Habitat Section 3, which according to her map was on the other side of the station. The walk would take about 20 minutes, assuming she didn't get lost. She was halfway to the door when someone stepped into her path. It was a large alien about 7 feet tall, with rough gray skin and a ridge of sharp spines running down its back. Its eyes were small and yellow, and they were fixed on with unmistakable hostility. "You're the alien said. Its voice was deep and growling, and the translator rendered it with a harsh edge. Looked up at the creature. It was at least a foot taller than her and probably 3 times her weight. Back home, she would have compared it to a particularly angry bull, the kind that you approached carefully and never turned your back on. I'm from Earth, if that's what you mean, she said, keeping her voice calm. I am Dex of Clan, the alien said, puffing out its chest. My people are the greatest warriors in the 7th sector. We do not fear. Nodded slowly. Okay, nice to meet you, Dex. She tried to step around him, but he moved to block her path again. You think you can come to our academy and frighten everyone with your reputation, Dex growled. You think we will cower before you like the weak species? I don't want anyone to cower, said. I just want to get to my room and unpack. Coward, Dex spat. You hide behind your calm words, but I see you for what you are. A predator, a killer. You do not belong here. Felt her patience beginning to wear thin. She had been traveling for nearly 2 weeks to get here. First the shuttle from Montana to the spaceport in New Mexico, then the long journey through space to the academy. She was tired, she was hungry, and she really didn't want to deal with an alien bully on her first day. Look, she said, meeting his yellow eyes with her green ones. I don't know what your problem is, but I'm not looking for trouble. I'm here to learn, same as everyone else. So if you'll excuse me, I have somewhere to be. She stepped to the side and walked past him. For a moment, she thought he would let her go. Then she heard him snarl and felt his clawed hand grab her shoulder. Instinct took over. On Earth, when something grabs you from behind, you don't stop to think. You react. His body moved before her mind could catch up, years of training and experience guiding her movements. She dropped her center of gravity, twisted her shoulder out of his grip, and spun to face him. Dex stared at her in shock. He had been expecting her to freeze, to cry out in fear, to submit to his dominance. Instead, she had broken his hold like it was nothing, and now she was looking at him with a calm, steady gaze that made something in his primitive brain start screaming warnings. Don't grab me, said quietly. I don't like being grabbed. The other students had stopped moving, watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Some of them had backed away, pressing themselves against the walls. Others had pulled out communication devices, ready to call for security. Dex flexed his claws, his spines extending in what recognized as a threat display. She had seen enough animals do something similar when they felt threatened or were preparing to attack. It was meant to make him look bigger, more dangerous. It didn't work on. She had faced down mountain lions that weighed twice as much as this alien. She had once scared off a black bear by making loud noises and waving her arms. She had grown up on a planet where the wildlife could kill you if you showed fear. She didn't show fear. Walk away, she said. We don't need to do this. Dex hesitated. His instincts were telling him something that his pride refused to accept. This small creature, barely reaching his chest, was not afraid of him. More than that, she was standing in a way that suggested she was ready to defend herself, her weight balanced and her hands free. In his entire life, Dex had never met another student who wasn't intimidated by his size and reputation. Even the teachers usually gave him a wide berth, preferring to avoid conflict rather than challenge him. But this human was different. She was looking at him like he was an inconvenience, not a threat. This isn't over, he growled, but he took a step back. We will finish this later. Whatever you say, replied. She picked up her bag, which had fallen during their brief scuffle, and continued toward the exit. Behind her, the other students burst into frantic whispered conversations. She could hear them through her translator, their voices overlapping in a cascade of shock and disbelief. Did you see that? She broke his grip like it was nothing. They are supposed to be the strongest species in the sector. How did she do that? I heard they can run for days without stopping. Days. She didn't even look scared. Why wasn't she scared? Walked faster, suddenly wanting very much to be alone. She made it to Habitat Section 3 without any more incidents. Her room was small but comfortable, with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out onto the stars. She set her bag down on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, staring out at the infinite darkness beyond the glass. What had she gotten herself into? She had known that being one of the first humans at the academy would be challenging. Her instructors back on Earth had warned her that other species might be nervous around her, that she would need to work hard to overcome their prejudices. But she hadn't expected to be treated like a monster just for existing. A soft chime sounded from her tablet, pulled it out of her pocket, and saw that she had a message from another human student, a guy named Cooper who she had met briefly during the selection process. "Hey, welcome party in the Human Common Room, Section 3, Room 47. Starts in an hour. Could use some friendly faces after today. Hope to see you there." Smiled slightly. At least she wasn't alone in this. There were 9 other humans at the academy, all of them facing the same challenges she was. Maybe together they could figure out how to navigate this strange new world. She unpacked her bag, putting her clothes in the small closet and arranging her few personal items on the desk. There was a photo of her family, her parents and her younger brother standing in front of their ranch house. There was a small rock she had found in the mountains during her survival trip, smooth and gray and somehow comforting. There was a book of poetry that her grandmother had given her before she left, an old paper book that smelled like home. She looked at these things and felt a sudden wave of homesickness wash over her. Earth was so far away, her family was so far away, and she was stuck here in a place where everyone looked at her like she was something to be feared. But Monroe was not the kind of person who gave up easily. She had survived worse than this. She had survived blizzards and droughts, broken bones and broken hearts. She had survived being the only girl on her high school's wrestling team, and she had survived the grueling selection process that had earned her a spot at the academy. She would survive this too. An hour later, she walked into the human common room and found the other 9 humans waiting for her. They were a diverse group, representing different parts of Earth and different backgrounds. There was a tall guy with red hair and freckles who came from somewhere in Ireland. There was Lisa, a small woman with dark hair who had grown up in Mexico City. There was Ben, a quiet guy from Nigeria who seemed to prefer listening to talking. And there were 6 others, each with their own story of how they had ended up here. Said, grinning as she walked in, "Glad you could make it. We were just comparing notes on our first day." "Let me guess," said, taking a seat in one of the human-sized chairs that had been provided for them. "Everyone's terrified of us." "Got it in one," Lisa said. I smiled at my roommate and she literally ran out of the room. I thought my translator was malfunctioning, but apparently showing teeth is a threat display for most species. My biology teacher asked me to sit at the back of the class because I was making the other students nervous just by breathing, Ben added. "What about you?" asked. "How was your first day?" Thought about her encounter with Dex, about the way the other students had stared at her, about the whispered conversations she had heard as she walked through the halls. "Interesting," she said finally. "I think we're going to have to work pretty hard to change how they see us." "Or we could just lean into it," another student suggested. His name was Jack and he had a mischievous glint in his eye. "Think about it. They're already scared of us. We could use that." "To do what?" Lisa asked skeptically. "I don't know. Get better seats in the cafeteria. Avoid lines at the library. The possibilities are endless." "We're not here to scare people," said firmly. "We're here to build bridges, to show them that humans can be trusted." "Easier said than done," muttered. Looked around at the group, seeing the frustration and uncertainty in their faces. They were all far from home, surrounded by aliens who saw them as monsters. It would be easy to give in to despair, to lash out, to prove the aliens right about them. But that wasn't who they were. "Listen," she said, "I know today was rough. I know it's going to be hard, but we have a chance to do something important here. We're the first humans at this academy. Whatever we do, whatever impression we make, it's going to shape how the rest of the galaxy sees our entire species. We owe it to everyone back home to get this right." The room was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "She's right," he said. "We can't mess this up. Too much is riding on it." "So what do we do?" Lisa asked. "Thought about it. We be ourselves," she said. "We study hard, we follow the rules, and we try to make friends. Eventually, they'll see that we're not the monsters they think we are." "And if they don't?" Ben asked quietly. "Then we keep trying," said. "That's what humans do, we don't give up." The next few weeks were some of the hardest of life. She went to her classes, sat in the back to avoid making other students uncomfortable, and tried her best to participate without drawing too much attention to herself. It wasn't easy. In her introduction to Galactic History class, she learned that Earth had been classified as a for over 200 years, ever since the first Galactic Survey team had visited and barely escaped with their lives. The survey report, which was still required reading at the Academy, described Earth as one of the most hostile environments ever discovered, a planet where even the plants could kill you. Had read the report with a mixture of amusement and embarrassment. The survey team had landed in Australia, which was apparently the worst possible choice for a first impression. They had been attacked by spiders, snakes, crocodiles, and something called a cassowary, which the report described as a dinosaur that had never gotten the message about extinction. 2 of the 3 team members had nearly died, and the third had developed what the report called profound psychological trauma. After that, Earth had been quarantined. No galactic species was allowed to visit, and humans were not allowed to leave. It had taken nearly 200 years of diplomatic negotiations to change that policy, and the student exchange program was one of the first results. Understood now why the other species were afraid of her. To them, she was a representative of a world that had nearly killed their explorers. She was a predator from a planet of predators, and nothing she said or did could change that fact. But she could try to show them that there was more to her than her planet of origin. Her first breakthrough came in advanced relations class, taught by Professor, a four-armed who had initially been so nervous around her that he could barely speak. The class was discussing conflict resolution techniques, and the professor had asked for examples of how different species dealt with disputes. Most of the students described elaborate rituals of dominance display, carefully choreographed confrontations that allowed both parties to save face while establishing a hierarchy. The like decks used physical intimidation. The used bioluminescent signaling. The used complex vocalizations that could convey subtle shades of submission or challenge. When Professor asked how humans resolved conflicts, she thought for a long moment before answering. "We talk," she said. "We sit down, usually over food or drinks, and we talk through our disagreements. If that doesn't work, we bring in a neutral third party to help mediate. If that doesn't work, we have courts and laws to resolve disputes fairly." The class stared at her in disbelief. "You use words," a student asked, its body flickering with colors that's translator interpreted as skepticism. "But you are predators, surely you fight." "Sometimes," admitted. "But we try not to. Fighting is dangerous, and usually there are better ways to solve problems." "But if you can easily defeat your opponent, why would you choose not to?" I asked. Thought about how to explain it. "Because winning a fight doesn't mean you've solved the problem," she said. "If I beat someone up to get what I want, they might give it to me, but they'll also resent me. They'll look for ways to get revenge. They'll warn others not to trust me. In the long run, talking is almost always better than fighting." Professor's 4 arms had stopped trembling. He was looking at with something like curiosity. "That is a remarkably sophisticated approach to conflict resolution," he said. "Not what I would have expected from a species." "We've had a lot of practice," said. "Earth has billions of humans, and we don't always agree. We had to figure out how to live together, or we would have destroyed ourselves a long time ago." The class was silent. Could see the other students processing this information, trying to reconcile it with their preconceptions about humans. After class, Professor approached her desk. "Miss Monroe," he said, his voice much steadier than it had been at the beginning of the semester, "I wanted to thank you for your contribution today. I think it helped the other students understand your species a bit better." "I hope so," said. "I'm tired of everyone being scared of me." "If I may ask a personal question," the professor said, "do you find it difficult, being here, surrounded by species that fear you?" Considered the question. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I keep reminding myself that fear usually comes from not understanding something. The more they learn about us, the less afraid they'll be." Professor nodded slowly. "A wise perspective. I must confess, when I was told that a human would be joining my class, I considered requesting a transfer. Now I am glad I did not. You have given me much to think about." "Thank you, Professor. That means a lot." Over the following weeks, noticed a gradual change in how her classmates treated her. They still kept their distance, still flinched when she moved too quickly, but the outright terror was beginning to fade. Some of them even started to approach her with questions, curious about Earth and human culture. A student named Lyra was the first to really talk to her. Were humanoid in shape, with smooth skin that changed color based on their emotions. They were empaths, able to sense the feelings of those around them, and Lyra had been watching for weeks, trying to understand her. "You're different," Lyra said one day, sliding into the seat next to in the cafeteria. "From what I expected, I mean." Looked up from her meal, a bland protein paste that the academy called food. "Different how?" "You're calm," Lyra said, her skin shifting to a shade of blue that indicated curiosity. "Everyone said would be aggressive, always looking for threats, always ready to fight. But you just sit there, eating your food, reading your tablet." "Would you prefer it if I was growling and baring my teeth?" asked with a slight smile. Lyra's skin flickered with amusement. "No, I think I prefer this." From that day on, Lyra became's first real friend at the academy. The seemed fascinated by humans, constantly asking questions about Earth and its dangers. Did her best to answer honestly, neither downplaying the risks nor exaggerating them. "It's true that Earth is dangerous," she said during one of their conversations. "But humans adapted. We learned to build shelters to protect us from the weather, to make tools to defend ourselves from predators, to grow our own food instead of hunting it. Over time, we made our world less dangerous, at least for ourselves." "But you still have predators," Lyra said. "You still have diseases and natural disasters and all the other things that kill beings on your world." "Yes," admitted, "but we deal with them. We have doctors to treat diseases, emergency services to help people during disasters, and we've driven most of the big predators into protected areas where they can't hurt anyone." "Protected areas." Lyra's skin shifted to indicate confusion. "You protect the animals that can kill you." "They're part of our world," explained. "They have as much right to exist as we do, and honestly, most of them aren't that dangerous if you leave them alone. They only attack humans when they feel threatened." Lyra shook her head slowly. "Every time I think I understand humans, you say something that confuses me all over again." Laughed. "We confuse ourselves sometimes." The friendship with Lyra opened doors for other students, seeing that an empath was comfortable spending time with a human, began to reconsider their assumptions. Lyra's people were known for their ability to sense danger, and if she didn't sense danger from, maybe the human wasn't as threatening as they thought. But not everyone was willing to change their mind. Dex had not forgotten their confrontation on the first day. He had been waiting, watching, looking for an opportunity to prove his dominance over and after 2 months of waiting, he finally found one. The incident happened during a physical education class. The academy required all students to participate in physical activities suited to their species, both to promote health and to help different species understand each other's capabilities. For This meant demonstrating human physical abilities to a class full of aliens who had only heard rumors about. The instructor, a biomechanics expert named Professor, had asked to show the class a typical human exercise routine. She had chosen something simple: a few stretches, some jumping jacks, and a short run around the training room. For it was nothing special, just a basic warm-up. For the watching aliens, it was terrifying. The stretches showed off the disturbing flexibility of human joints, the way they could bend and twist in directions that seemed impossible. The jumping jacks demonstrated the power of human muscles, launching her body into the air over and over again without apparent effort. And the run was something else entirely. Jogged around the room at a pace she considered leisurely, maybe a 7-minute mile. She wasn't even breathing hard when she finished. But the other students were staring at her like she had just done something supernatural. "How long could you maintain that pace?" Professor asked, his voice carefully neutral. Shrugged. "Depends. On a good day, I could run like that for a few hours. If I really pushed myself, maybe longer." "Hours?" someone whispered. "She could run for hours." "That's nothing," Jack said from the sidelines. He was in the same class along with 3 other human students. Back home, people run marathons for fun. That's over 40 kilometers, usually in less than 3 hours. The room went very quiet. "Impossible," a voice said from the back of the class. It was Dex, his spines extending in a display of aggression. "No creature can run that far." "Humans can," said simply. "We evolved as persistence hunters. Our ancestors would chase prey animals across the savannah until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. It's just what we do." Dex stalked forward, pushing through the other students until he was standing directly in front of. "You lie," he snarled. "You tell stories to frighten us, but I am not afraid. My people are warriors." Looked up at him calmly. They had been through this before. "I'm not trying to frighten anyone, Dex. I'm just answering the professor's question." "Then prove it," Dex said. "Race me. Show everyone that humans are really as fast as you claim." Hesitated. She didn't want to escalate the situation, but she could see that Dex wasn't going to back down. If she refused, he would claim she was afraid of him. If she accepted, she risked humiliating him in front of the entire class. "Dex," Professor said warningly, "this is not an appropriate challenge." The human student was simply demonstrating her species' capabilities, not issuing a challenge. "I want to race her," Dex insisted, "unless she is afraid." Sighed. Sometimes there was no avoiding a confrontation. "Fine," she said. "Let's race. What distance?" Dex's yellow eyes gleamed with anticipation. 10 laps around the training room. First one to finish wins. 10 laps was about 2 kilometers, for that was barely a warm-up. But she could see that Dex was confident, his posture aggressive and eager. He clearly believed he could beat her. "Okay," she said, 10 laps. They lined up at the starting position while the other students gathered along the walls to watch. Professor, looking resigned, held up one of his appendages to signal the start. "Ready, begin." Dex launched himself forward with explosive speed. They were powerful sprinters, their muscular bodies built for short bursts of intense activity. He tore around the first lap, his claws clicking against the floor, his spine streaming behind him. Ran at her steady pace, not sprinting, not pushing herself. She completed the first lap about 3 seconds behind Dex. By the third lap, Dex was starting to slow. His breathing was becoming labored, his movements less smooth. Maintained her pace, closing the gap. By the 5th lap, they were running side by side. Dex was gasping for air, his body not designed for sustained effort. Felt fine. Her heart rate had barely increased. By the 7th lap was ahead. Dex had slowed to a stumbling jog, his muscles screaming for rest. Glanced back at him, saw the desperation in his eyes and made a decision. She slowed down, matching his pace. When he sped up, she sped up. When he slowed, she slowed. She stayed just ahead of him, close enough to touch, as they completed the 8th lap, the 9th lap, the 10th lap. They crossed the finish line together. The room was silent for a moment. Then Dex collapsed to the ground, his chest heaving as he struggled to breathe. Stood beside him, barely winded, and offered him her hand. "Good race," she said. Dex stared at her hand like it was a weapon. Then, slowly, he reached up and let her help him to his feet. "You could have beaten me," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "You were holding back." "It wasn't about winning," said. "It was about showing you that we don't have to be enemies." Dex was quiet for a long moment. Then, to the shock of everyone watching, his spines relaxed and he ducked his head in what's translator identified as a gesture of respect. "You are strange," he said, "but perhaps not as bad as I thought." It wasn't exactly a friendship, but it was a start. Word of the race spread quickly through the academy. By the next day, everyone knew that a human had challenged a warrior to a race of endurance and had chosen to tie rather than humiliate her opponent. Opinions about began to shift. She was still scary, still a predator from her, but maybe she wasn't the mindless killer they had imagined. Maybe she had honor. Maybe she could be trusted. 3 months into her time at the academy was starting to feel like she belonged. She had friends now, not just Lyra but several other students who had gotten over their initial fear and discovered that humans could be good company. She was doing well in her classes, earning high marks in most subjects. She had even started a study group that included species from 5 different worlds. And then the pirates came. The first sign of trouble was a slight tremor that ran through the station, followed by an announcement over the intercom. "Attention all students and staff. Please remain calm. There has been a minor disruption to station systems. All classes are canceled until further notice. Please return to your quarters and await further instructions." Was in the library when the announcement came. She looked up from her tablet and saw Lyra approaching, her skin flickering with colors that indicated anxiety. "Something's wrong," Lyra said. "I can feel fear, a lot of it coming from the administrative section." "Maybe they just don't want us to panic," suggested. "No," Lyra shook her head. "This is different, this is terror." Before could respond, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing the library in an eerie red glow. Then a new voice came over the intercom, harsh and grating. "Attention, inhabitants of this pathetic station. This is Captain Vex of the Void Raiders. We have taken control of your communications and security systems. Resistance is futile. Surrender your valuables and your lives will be spared. Fight us and you will die screaming." The students in the library began to panic. Some of them ran for the exits, others huddled in corners, still others simply froze, unable to process what was happening. Stood up slowly, her mind racing. Void Raiders. She had heard of them during her training on Earth. They were a notorious group of pirates who preyed on defenseless stations and ships, taking what they wanted and killing anyone who got in their way. They came from a Class 8 called, and they were considered one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Almost as dangerous as humans. Lyra said quietly, "We need to get out of here, find somewhere safe." "Where?" Lyra's voice was shaking. "They've taken control of the station. There's nowhere to go." Thought about her training, about the countless hours she had spent preparing for emergencies. On Earth, they called it situational awareness. Always know your exits, always have a plan. "The human common room," she said. "It's in a different section, away from the main areas they'd target. If we can get there, we can regroup with the other humans and figure out what to do." "The other humans?" Lyra looked at her with wide eyes. "What can 10 humans do against pirates?" Smiled grimly, "More than you might think." They moved through the station carefully, avoiding the main corridors where the raiders were likely to be searching for victims. Led the way, her senses alert for any sign of danger. Lyra followed close behind, her empathic abilities helping them sense when enemies were nearby. Twice they had to hide, pressing themselves into alcoves while raider patrols passed by. They were large and heavily armed, their bodies covered in weapons and trophies from past conquests. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never encountered anything they couldn't defeat. Watched them pass and felt something stirring inside her. It was a feeling she recognized from her time on Earth, from facing down animals that wanted to hurt her. It was fear, yes, but also something else. Something that humans had evolved over millions of years of survival. The will to fight. They reached the human common room without being detected. The door slid open and found herself facing the other 9 humans, all of them looking tense and worried but also determined. Said, relief flooding his voice. "Thank God you're okay. We were about to come looking for you." "I'm fine," she said, pulling Lyra inside and closing the door behind them. "What's the situation?" "Bad," Jack said. He was standing by a terminal trying to access the station's systems. "The raiders have taken control of the main sections. They're rounding up students and staff, anyone who doesn't resist. So far, there haven't been any casualties, but—" he trailed off, his face grim. "But it's only a matter of time," finished. "We have to do something," Lisa said. "We can't just hide here while people are in danger." "What can we do?" Ben asked. "We're just students. We don't have weapons. We don't have training." Looked at him. "Actually, we have plenty of training. Every human in this room has grown up on a. We know how to survive, how to fight, how to adapt. The raiders are counting on finding a station full of frightened prey. They're not expecting to find us." "You want to fight them?" asked, his eyes widening. "They are too. They're not like the other species here." "I know," said. "That's why they're not expecting resistance. They think they're the scariest thing in the galaxy. They've never encountered humans before." The room went quiet as the humans considered her words. Then, slowly, Jack started to grin. "She's right," he said. "They have been preying on soft targets for years. Stations full of species that can't fight back. They have no idea what they're dealing with." "So what do we do?" Lisa asked. Started to outline a plan. It was crazy, probably suicidal, but it was better than waiting to be captured. They would split into groups, move through the station, and create distractions to draw the raiders away from their hostages. They would use their knowledge of the station's layout to stay ahead of their enemies, striking and retreating, never letting them pin them down. And if they could get to the station's security center, maybe they could take back control of the systems and call for help. "This is insane," Ben muttered. "We're going to get killed." "Maybe," admitted. "But I'd rather die fighting than be taken as a slave or ransom to my family. Wouldn't you?" Ben met her eyes and after a long moment nodded. Yeah, I would." "Then let's do this." They armed themselves with whatever they could find. The common room didn't have weapons, but it had plenty of items that could be used as tools of improvisation. Fire extinguishers that could be sprayed in an attacker's face, heavy furniture that could be used as shields or clubs, cables that could be used to trip or restrain. Humans had been making weapons out of everyday objects since the dawn of their species. A few aliens with guns weren't going to change that. "What about me?" Lyra asked. Her voice was small, frightened, but determined. "I want to help." Looked at her friend. There was not a fighter, her people had never needed to be, but she had something none of the humans had. "You can sense emotions, right?" asked, "even through walls." Lyra nodded. "To a limited extent. I can tell if someone is nearby and whether they're afraid or aggressive." "Then you're our early warning system. You stay close to me and tell me if anyone's approaching. Can you do that?" Lyra's skin shifted to a determined shade of purple. "I can do that." They split into 3 groups. Would lead one team toward the engineering section, looking for ways to sabotage the raider ship's connection to the station. Lisa would take another team to try and find the captured students and create confusion. Would lead the last group to the security center. The most dangerous mission, but also the most important. Good luck, said as they prepared to part ways. Try not to die. Same to you, replied. See you on the other side. The teams moved out, disappearing into the red-lit corridors of the station. This group consisted of herself, Lyra, Ben, and a human named Sophie who had grown up in Alaska and claimed to be good at moving quietly through hostile environments. They made their way toward the security center, using maintenance corridors and service passages to avoid the main areas. Lyra's empathic sense proved invaluable, warning them whenever raiders were nearby. Twice they had to backtrack, taking longer routes to avoid patrols. After 20 minutes of careful movement, they reached the security center. 2 guards stood outside the door, their weapons held ready. 2 guards, whispered. We need to take them out quickly and quietly. How? Ben asked. They're bigger than us and they have guns. Studied the guards, nodding their posture and positioning. They looked bored, not expecting any trouble. Why would they? This was supposed to be an easy raid on a defenseless station. Sophie, can you create a distraction? Make some noise, draw them away from the door. Sophie nodded. Give me 2 minutes. She disappeared down a side corridor, waited, counting the seconds in her head. Then, from somewhere nearby, came a crash followed by what sounded like someone running. The guards reacted immediately, both of them moving toward the sound. In their eagerness to investigate, they left the door unguarded. Moved. She covered the distance to the first guard in 3 steps, grabbed him from behind, and used his own momentum to slam him against the wall. His weapon clattered to the floor as he collapsed. The second guard was already turning, his gun coming up. But Ben was there, swinging a fire extinguisher with all his strength. It connected with the guard's head and he went down. The whole thing took less than 5 seconds. Inside, quick, said, grabbing one of the fallen weapons. It was heavier than she expected, but she figured out the basics quickly enough. Point and pull the trigger. Simple. The security center was empty except for a single sitting at the main console, monitoring the station systems. He looked up as they burst in, his face registering shock. What? Pointed the weapon at him. Don't move, keep your hands where I can see them. The stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he began to laugh. A human, he said, his voice dripping with amusement. One of the new students. I heard they were attending this pathetic school, but I didn't believe it. Believe it, said. Now step away from the console. They didn't move. Do you know who I am, little human? I am second in command of the Void Raiders. I have killed more beings than you have met, and you think you can threaten me with a weapon you clearly don't know how to use. I know which end the bullets come out of, said. That's all I need to know. Some amusement faded. He studied her more carefully, his predator's instincts finally recognizing the danger in front of him. You're not afraid, he said slowly. Why aren't you afraid? I'm from Earth, said simply. We don't scare easily. Earth, eyes widened slightly. The Class 12, I've heard stories. Then you know I'm not bluffing. There was a moment of tension, the 2 predators facing each other across the console. Then made his decision and lunged. Shot him in the leg. He went down with a howl of pain, clutching his injured limb. Walked over and kicked his weapon away, then pointed her gun at his head. I said don't move, she told him. Are you going to listen this time? Glared at her with pure hatred, but he nodded. Ben, tie him up. Sophie, Lyra, watch the door. I'm going to try to figure out these controls. The console was complex, but had always been good with computers. She worked through the menus, trying to find the security protocols. After a few minutes, she found what she was looking for. I can seal the bulkheads, she said. Trap the raiders in specific sections and cut them off from each other. And I can send a distress signal to the nearest patrol fleet. How long until help arrives? Ben asked. Check the data. 4 hours minimum. Can we hold out that long? thought about the other humans, scattered throughout the station, fighting against an enemy that outnumbered them badly. She thought about the students who were being held hostage, terrified and helpless. She thought about everything she had learned in the past 3 months, about building bridges and showing the galaxy that humans could be trusted. "We don't have a choice," she said. "We have to try." She activated the bulkhead seals, cutting the station into isolated sections. Then she broadcast a message over the intercom, using frequencies that the raiders wouldn't be able to block. "Attention, students and staff of the Galactic Academy. This is Monroe. The human students have taken control of the security center and are working to neutralize the raider threat. Help is on the way. Until it arrives, stay calm and stay hidden. If any raiders come near you, make noise and try to lead them toward the nearest bulkhead. We'll seal them in. We're going to get through this together." She ended the transmission and looked at her friends. Ben was standing guard over the tied-up. Sophie was watching the door. Lyra was huddled in the corner, her skin flickering with a mixture of fear and hope. "Now what?" Sophie asked. Smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of an apex predator, a creature that had evolved to survive the worst planet in the galaxy. "Now," she said, "we hunt." The next 4 hours were the longest of life, but also the most intense. She coordinated with the other human teams, using the security systems to track the raiders and guide her people to advantageous positions. One by one, they were isolated, ambushed, and neutralized. His team managed to cut the connection between the raider ship and the station, stranding the pirates without their primary means of escape. Lisa's team freed the captured students, leading them to safe areas and sealing the bulkheads behind them. Ant's team held the security center, repelling 2 attempts by the raiders to retake it. When the patrol fleet finally arrived, they found a station in chaos but largely intact. The Void Raiders had been defeated, not by trained soldiers, but by 10 human teenagers and 1 very brave. Captain Vex, the raider leader, was found sealed in a storage compartment, surrounded by the wreckage of his attempts to break through the bulkhead doors. When the security forces opened the compartment, he looked up at them with haunted eyes. "The humans," he said, his voice hoarse. "They hunted us, through the whole station for hours. Every time we thought we were safe, they found us. Every time we tried to fight back, they disappeared. It was like being prey." He shuddered. "I never want to face humans again." In the aftermath of the attack, and the other human students became heroes. The story spread across the galaxy, how 10 young had fought off an entire crew of Void Raiders, protecting a station full of species that had feared them. It was exactly the kind of story that changed perceptions. Professor sought out the day after the rescue. His compound eyes were still showing signs of stress from the ordeal, but he no longer trembled in her presence. "Miss Monroe," he said, "I owe you and your fellow humans an apology. When you first arrived, I thought of you as a threat. I feared what you might do, what you were capable of. I never imagined that you would use those capabilities to protect us." "We protect our own," said, "and after 3 months here, the people in this station are our own too." Lyra, standing beside, turned a warm shade of orange. "I told you she was different," she said to the professor. Dex appeared in the doorway, his spines fully retracted in a posture of complete submission. He walked up to, and, to the shock of everyone watching, lowered his head until it was below hers. "You saved my clanmate during the attack," he said. "One of your humans pulled her from the path of a raider's weapon. A does not forget such debts." "It was Jack," said. "He's the one you should thank." "I will," Dex promised. "But you are the leader of your people here. You are the one who organized the defense. The honor of the debt falls to you." He raised his head and met her eyes. "I was wrong about you, Monroe. You are not a mindless predator. You are a warrior, and I would be proud to call you ally." Felt a lump in her throat. This was what she had hoped for when she came to the academy. Not fear, not submission, but respect, understanding, maybe even friendship. "I'd be proud to call you ally too, Dex," she said. The spines lifted slightly, a display that now recognized as pleasure. "Then it is done. From this day forward our clans are bonded." As Dex walked away, Lyra leaned close to. "I think you just made history," she said. "A has never sworn alliance with an off before." "There's a first time for everything," said. She looked around at the damaged station, at the students and staff slowly returning to their normal routines, at the security teams cleaning up the last traces of the raider attack. It would take time to repair the physical damage, but something else had changed, something that couldn't be measured in credits or supplies. The galaxy had learned a new lesson about humans. They weren't just predators from a nightmare planet. They were protectors, defenders, friends. And that thought was worth all the fear and prejudice she had faced. It was worth the long journey from Earth, worth the lonely weeks of being treated like a monster, worth the terror of fighting against an enemy that should have been unstoppable. She had come to the Galactic Academy to build bridges, and in the end, she had built something even better. She had built trust. As the weeks passed and life at the Academy returned to normal, found that everything had changed. Students who had once avoided her now sought her out, wanting to hear her stories about Earth, asking for advice on how to face their fears. The human students were no longer isolated. They had been integrated into the social fabric of the Academy, their origins now seen as an asset rather than a threat. Started dating an exchange student who found his red hair fascinating. Lisa became the president of the Cultural Exchange Club. Ben discovered a talent for poetry, of all things, and started teaching it to other students. And Jack, the mischievous one who had suggested using fear to their advantage, became the Academy's most popular self-defense instructor. Herself was offered a position on the Academy Security Advisory Board, the youngest student ever to receive such an honor. She accepted, knowing that it was another opportunity to show the galaxy what humans could be. One evening, she sat with Lyra in the observation lounge, watching the stars drift by. They had been friends for 4 months now, and couldn't imagine her life without the color-changing empath by her side. "Do you ever regret coming here?" Lyra asked, her skin a peaceful shade of blue. Thought about the question. She thought about the fear she had faced, the prejudice she had overcome, the battle she had fought. She thought about her family back on Earth, so far away, and about the new family she had found here among the stars. "No," she said finally, "not for a second." Lyra's skin shifted to a warm gold. "I'm glad. The Academy wouldn't be the same without you." "Neither would I," admitted. "You know, when I first got here, I was ready to hate everyone. They all looked at me like I was a monster, but I kept telling myself to be patient, to give them a chance. And look at us now." "The scary and the sensitive empath," Lyra said with a ripple of amusement. "We make quite a pair." "The best pair," agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the universe spin slowly around them. Somewhere out there, Earth was turning, its billions of humans going about their lives without knowing that 10 of their children had changed the course of galactic history. And somewhere in the Academy, a new group of students was arriving, species from worlds across the galaxy, some of them just as frightened of humans as the last group had been. Smiled, she had work to do. She was the girl who had arrived at alien school late. 10 seconds later, everyone had regretted it. But now, she was something more. She was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of what humans could be when they chose to be protectors instead of predators. And that, she thought, was the best story of all.